Now, let me tell you where I'm standing because I'd rather you know my priors than have me pretend I don't have any. I'm not neutral, right? I have watched Candace for a very long time. I own merch via my husband, who finds my interest in Candace very interesting. So he funds it, I guess. And you should factor it in because maybe that completely invalidates everything I've just said because I find her compelling. Hey y'all, welcome back. This is Patience, and this is another episode of the Sidebar. It has been a minute. A lot has changed. My hair is one of those things, I know. And I'm still working on this whole consistency thing, and we will get there someday, maybe eventually, probably. I don't know. Just stay with me and support me. If you're new here, here's a quick version. I'm an attorney, 13 years of commercial contracts inside of companies. And now I run my own law practice. I also have a startup, Midley.ai. And Sidebar is not me reading you the news. I find that so annoying. I don't want somebody reading me headlines or reading off a script telling me what's going on. I want somebody to actually talk to me about what's going on. So that's what this is. Speaking of which, okay, so my nephew has decided he wants to be a lawyer, just like his auntie. And listen, I am so excited about that. So now the two of us, we kind of go back and forth every time we see one another. And we talk about everything in the headlines, or at least try to say, have you seen this? We do this all the time. It's like consistent. And we actually did it last night, which is why I remembered this. The boy has opinions. He's so smart. He's on the debate team at his college and he's winning competition. And there's a lot to go back and forth about right now, actually. So we've been on this whole NFL situation. I can't recall his name. I know it's Brian is his first name. It's a lawsuit, which is a whole thing. And then obviously the debate that the entire world seems to be buzzing about right now, which is the Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson debate from last week. So here's the plan. Today, we're going to talk about the debate. The NFL story, I'm holding until next time because there's still a lot of information that I'm missing and that I just need to wrap my head around. So before I tell you, I want to actually feel like I know what I'm talking about. Oh, and then I want to talk about it because my husband actually brought it to my attention and it is really interesting just on the surface of what I have found out. But the debate, let's get into it. Because there is a question that got asked about 40 times on Friday. And every single time it got asked, I got a little more annoyed. The question was, Candace, what's your evidence? And I want to spend the next few minutes just explaining why, as a lawyer, that question makes me want to throw something across the room. So let me set the table really quick because I'm not going to recap 3 hours of content. I actually watched the entire debate live, so it was a convenient time for me to watch such a long debate. So let's just recap really broadly. August 14th, Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson, Patrick Bet-David moderating, $300,000 on the table. The stated question was whether Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk alone or whether he's being set up as a patsy. And the shape of the whole thing, start to finish, was Wilson asking Candace to produce proof and Candace explaining why she has questions. That framing is the problem, not who won, the framing. So here's my argument, and I'm going to give it to you in 5 pieces. Piece 1, she is not the prosecution. See, in an American criminal case, exactly one party carries the burden of proof, and it is the state. The defense never has to prove who else did it. The defense doesn't have to name an alternative killer. The defense's entire job can be, and very often is, you have not proven your case. This is not a dodge. This is the structure. It's how the whole system is actually built. So when somebody positions themselves as a critic of the state's case, and the reason is, well, then who did it? That person has quietly picked up the burden and set it down on the wrong side of the table. I'm saying this slowly so you can follow along because I feel like there's a lot of fast speaking these days with everything going on. Lawyers sometimes do this on purpose. It's a move, right? It works beautifully on people who haven't been trained to notice it. And so that's why you kind of have to take it slow. And that's actually kind of why I appreciated Candace really trying to explain her position and not just state it and move on. And, she was being put on a time clock to turn her answers around, and she was like, no, I'm going to take my time. But in any case, let's just jump to piece 2. Questions come before proof. Always. Nobody in history of investigation has ever started with evidence. You start with something that doesn't sit right, and then you go look. Demanding proof at the question stage isn't rigor. It's just a way of ending an inquiry before it begins. Because if the standard is that you may not ask until you can already answer, then nothing ever gets asked, right? And so the third piece, I think, is just look at who has access to what. So again, Candace has no subpoena power, no discovery, no crime lab. She can't depose anybody. She can't compel a single document. And the institutions being questioned are the same institutions who are sitting on the evidence, quite literally. So produce your evidence is a demand that is just structurally impossible to satisfy. And it's aimed at the one party in this entire conversation who cannot possibly satisfy it. That's not a fair fight. And everybody involved knows that it's not a fair fight. And maybe it was not intended to be a fair fight. So, there you have it. Piece 4, and this is the one I want you to actually hold on to. The anomalies are not Candace's. They're not hers. Robinson's own defense attorney challenged DNA evidence, not Candace. His lawyer. The ATF could not conclusively match the fatal bullets to the recovered rifle. They also couldn't rule it out. And I want to be fair about that, but they could not conclusively match it. And a lot of what came in at the July preliminary hearing came in as hearsay, which is permitted at this stage in Utah, but permitted is not the same thing as tested. See, the prosecutor stood up and call the case overwhelming. And I feel like all of your favorite celebs, especially on X, have been using this term, overwhelming. The evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming. And maybe it is, but overwhelming is an advocate's word. It's not a finding. It's what you say when you're trying to win, right? It's a posture, basically. Every single one of those points exists in record, independent of anybody's podcast, independent of Candace saying anything, they exist. You don't have to trust her to see them. Piece 5 is that this standard is being applied to exactly one person. Wilson himself said he was 75 to 85% sure. Nobody spent 3 hours demanding that he close that gap. Nobody asked him to prove a negative about who else might have been involved. The uncertainty only becomes a scandal when it belongs to Candace. So you don't have to believe a single one of her conclusions. I'm not necessarily saying that I do, but to see the question being used against her, that's the part that isn't a real question. It's just a device. It's just a posture, like I said. Now, let me tell you where I'm standing, because I'd rather you know my priors than have me pretend I don't have any. I'm not neutral, right? I have watched Candace for a very long time. I own merch via my husband, who finds my interest in Candace very interesting, so he funds it, I guess. I found her worth listening to, though. And that's the truth. And you should factor it in, because maybe that completely invalidates everything I've just said, because I find her compelling. And it doesn't mean I'm following anybody off a cliff. If somebody puts a real evidence in front of me that cuts against what she's saying, I will change my mind on this show out loud in front of anybody who I've had, the privilege of having this conversation with. I will change my mind. What I'm not going to do, though, is pretend that a person asking questions owes the world a finished case file, because that completely defeats the purpose of, investigating. And because I'm being honest about that, I have to be honest about something else. And this is a part where some of you are going to disagree with me, I'm sure. See, there's a real difference between two things that she's done. One is questioning the state's case. That requires no evidence at all. It is legitimate. And the demand for proof there is just completely obnoxious, for lack of a better word. It's just rubbish. The other thing is affirmatively asserting a specific conclusion. And she's also done that. She said on camera with her own words, with full confidence, that France and Israel are involved. That's not a question, that's a claim. And a claim carries a burden, including when it's heard. See, in the debate itself, when she got pushed on it, she said she couldn't say Israel was on the ground. So here's where I split it. Every time she says, this doesn't add up and I want to know more, she owes you nothing except her reasoning. But when she moves from, I have questions to, I am telling you with full confidence that these specific parties did XYZ. Now, that's a different kind of statement, and that one comes with a burden attached to it. We just have to be fair and honest. I think those two things got blended together by her, by everybody covering her, by some of the others who are covering the case, who are in support of her. And blending them is exactly how we ended up with 3 hours of two people talking past each other, because they really were. I don't actually even look at that as a good debate. I said that to my nephew when we were discussing it, and I'm actually waiting to hear back from him and his thoughts on it. If you separate them, the conversation actually becomes very useless. So last thing I'll say is, what could change my mind? So you can hold on to something. What could be shared that would change my mind? A guilty plea from Robinson, a conviction on the evidence as it's been presented. That would move me. On the other side, a primary document or a source willing to go on record corroborating foreign involvement. And she alleges that someone has shared something with her and she shared that with the authorities and the government. So maybe that's already happening in the background. That would move me though. Like, that is super compelling. And I'm actually wondering why it wasn't further investigated. But those are the benchmarks. You're to watch a trial. And yeah, that's the episode. If you got something out of this, subscribe. I'm being straight with you about why. The subscribes are the thing that tells me to keep making these and to try to be more consistent. And I want to keep making these. I actually always come up with ideas. I just never have time to record them. But I promise if you subscribe, I will become more consistent. There's more coming and more regularly this time around, I hope. But until next time, yeah, stay tuned. Have a good one. Bye, y'all.